right, so this is going to be the first in our retro pay-per-view series. We're going to go over the original WrestleMania 1, and I'm your host, Mike.
And I'm Frank, and welcome, everybody. Let's get right into it.
All right, WrestleMania 1, 1985. This is the one that started them all, the granddaddy of them all. This was a big chance that Vince took, putting this thing together.
This was a make and break for him, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Vince, he took a chance, you know. He said that his father never would have sold a company to him if he knew that he was going to take it national the way he did, because there were regionals, the regional promotions,
the territories,
the territories, and he was.
I don't know, man. I always thought that was eventually going to go away anyway.
Yeah, it was only a matter of time.
Because eventually the wrestling was going to become global if it wasn't already. And the territory thing wasn't going to survive because more fans were going to be demanding of more matches between certain people. And I mean, they did the territories versus territories every so often, especially NWA was known for that, going to Mid-Atlantic and everything else. But eventually I thought it was just going to go away. And eventually Vince McMahon wound up getting them.
Yeah. Well, what he started doing was buying up all the talent from the different promotions and,
And one of the smart things he did, and this is right before WrestleMania, is he came to a deal with Ted Turner to run World Wrestling Federation on TBS.
Yes. Yeah.
And this way, the fans of the South were able to see it. Now, the NWA wasn't exactly happy about this, but they were incorporated in with it. And eventually, Ted Turner wanted out of the deal. And for whatever it was, Vince got $1 million for getting out of the contract. He said, I made a few bucks off of it, but Jim Crockett utterly said, we pretty much paid for WrestleMania, and he's right.
Yeah.
They paid the way for the first WrestleMania, and thank you, Jim and Ted, because you paved the way for the Showcase of the Immortals.
Right, exactly. I mean, Vince's story is that he put all this money into it, and if it failed, they would have ran out of business, and maybe some of that.
He said that about the first three.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, in a way, he was right, especially when we get to number 3. It was pretty much playing Texas Hold'em. It was all or nothing.
Yeah.
And it was if it didn't pan out, it was over.
Well,
and we already know the history, what happened there. But
yeah, absolutely.
These were all a gamble that actually paid off, with some interesting matches and some not so interesting, but it was a work in progress.
Yeah, and they started the thing that helped the first WrestleMania get a lot of exposure. They started crossing over with MTV with all the rock stars, everything like that.
Celebrities.
There was the score to what was it called? The war to settle the score,
and then a month prior to it, which they aired. A month prior to WrestleMania, they aired the main event, which was Hogan and Piper for the time.
But even before that, I think it was the summer before, they had another thing crossover with MTV.
Yeah,
that they did.
I think so.
So that was big. Getting Cyndi Lauper in there, and
that was huge in the women's match. I'll get to that in a minute. Besides them, look at the talent of all-star celebrities you had back then in WrestleMania 1. You had Muhammad Ali. Yeah. You had one of the greatest boxers ever, if not the best. You had Billy Martin, the former manager of the Yankees.
Yep.
You had Liberace. You had the Rockettes in Madison Square Garden. I mean, this was just star-studded for back in 1985.
Yeah, they really went all out.
They did, and it's a shame they don't do that more now. I honestly, I think it stopped right around WrestleMania 2000, WrestleMania 16, when they stopped bringing in the celebrities to be guests in it, and it was more, if they brought them in, they were active participants. Like Maria Menounos, Snooki, Bad Bunny. I mean, they became more thing. But I liked when they brought in the celebrities for each WrestleMania, and they took part of who was the timekeeper, the guest announcer, the commentator, maybe the special guest referee. Those were that added to the spectacular even more, and it made it a great show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was definitely a good setup. Mr. T obviously leading into him ultimately being in the main event. Mr. T was huge back then. He was doing the A-Team. Yes. He had just come off Rocky 3 a couple years prior to that. So he was on fire.
Yes.
They brought him in, even though he had a lot of heat with for Piper, which we'll kind of get into.
But my only issue with WrestleMania 1 is your first big grand spectacular, and you're not defending the championship belt.
Yeah,
that was my only thing. I mean, if Mr. T and Roddy Piper have their thing, then let them have their match. But ultimately, the feud of 1985 and even into 86 was Hogan and Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
So why not defend the title at the first WrestleMania? And you could still have Mr. T facing Roddy Piper, but I'm not wrong. I'm sorry. Yeah, you could even done that later on. But I mean, that was the focus.
Yeah, I think I have a feeling that one, they wanted the celebrity holding Mr. T in the main event, and two, I think it was because Piper was not willing to. Piper wouldn't job to Hogan cleanly, and so they didn't want WrestleMania.
He was the one guy that wouldn't play politics,
right? And I think that's why they didn't go with that, probably because of Piper and because of that, So,
makes sense.
What was the opening match for WrestleMania?
Tito Santana and the Executioner.
Yeah.
Who was Buddy Rose, who was
right.
He was not a jobber, but he was there for a few years in various matches. Yeah. But yeah, he played the role of the Executioner, and Tito Santana beat him cleanly.
But Tito had already been feuding with the Anvil, not the Anvil. I'm sorry, he had been feuding with Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Yeah,
prior to that,
over the Intercontinental title.
Yeah, so when Tito uses the flying forearm, he didn't finish him with the flying forearm. He puts him in the figure 4 leg lock.
Yes,
and he wanted to send a message to
Greg the Hammer, which he eventually wins the Intercontinental title from him, and we know from there on Savage.
Right. It was a short match. I thought it was okay. It was all right. It was anything.
To open it up, it could have been better because the two most important matches of a card obviously is going to be your opening match and your closing match.
Yeah,
and I mean it could have been better. I mean this again was a work in progress. This was their inaugural. Not pay-per-view because they obviously had one the year prior. Wrestling, was it the Wrestling Classic?
Yeah.
So this was their first WrestleMania. So there was room for error, but the match wasn't disappointing.
Yeah, it was short. It was what it was.
Speaking of short, that would be the next match on the card. It was King Kong Bundy beating SD Jones, Special Delivery Jones, in a record 9 seconds. He squashed him up against the turnbuckle, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, not much to say about that one.
Not when it comes to King Kong Bundy and his WrestleMania matches. No,
I
mean the only one that comes to mind really to me besides 2 would be 11 against the Undertaker. But I mean, it was what it was.
Yeah.
So next on the card was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat defeating Matt Bourne. Okay,
it was all right.
Not every Ricky Steamboat match is going to be good, but Matt Bourne wasn't exactly a guy that they were going one way or another with.
Right.
So, and some of these matches were just kind of like thrown together. And back then with WrestleMania, at least for the first 7 years, is what they kind of did was just say, okay, you and you, you're in a match together.
Right, exactly.
And sometimes it clicked and worked, and sometimes it didn't.
Who was on? And I watched this recently. I should know. Who was on commentary? Gorilla, right? Gorilla was on WrestleMania 1. Was
Gorilla Monsoon, and I believe it was Jesse Ventura too.
And Ventura.
As far as I know, they did the first 6 WrestleManias.
Yeah.
And I was kind of agitated that Jesse had left after WrestleMania 6 because I always thought the two of them were awesome on commentary. I mean, obviously, Gorilla and Bobby took over. The rest is history. But I always loved hearing Jesse Ventura and Gorilla Monsoon's bantering with each other.
Yeah, they were great. They were great. Jesse was amazing.
I mean, Jesse was always for the heel.
Yeah.
And for Hollywood. Gorilla was always for the fans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and Jesse Ventura always hated the Hulkster, the pukester, as he'd call them. And eventually Bobby Heenan took over that role. But I mean, I always loved listening to them commentate the matches. They would make it great.
Absolutely.
So from there, and I always question this, and I talked to you about this at one time. One of the active wrestlers on the roster in 1985 was still all-time great Bruno San Martino.
Yeah.
Now, as everybody knows, Bruno came back in the mid-'80s. It was supposed to be on a part-time basis. His final feud was in 1987, right before WrestleMania, maybe in 86, against Randy Savage for the Intercontinental title. He also feuded with Roddy Piper as well. His son, David San Martino, was on this card, and I always wondered why Bruno wasn't on the card, considering he was one of the all-time greats. That always puzzled me. He was in WrestleMania 2, which we'll get to next episode, but why he wasn't a part of it, I don't know. Was it an injury or just he didn't want to do it? I don't know. Maybe he gave it up to his son. There's no telling.
Yeah, I mean, who
But in any event, David San Martino and Brutus Beefcake, who was not Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Yeah, he was
a heel. Managed by Johnny V. That match ended in a no contest. For whatever reason, and it wasn't something that was flamboyant.
No, I thought this guy was terrible. Bruno's son was not a good worker, man.
David San Martino was nowhere to like his dad, and that's unfortunate considering he had some big shoes to fill.
Yeah,
and that also reminds me of Bill Watts and his son Eric Watts in WCW. Eric was never at that caliber that his father Bill was.
Mm-hmm.
So David San Martino was never ever where his father was. I mean,
right.
You talk about the inaugural WWE champion for 7 years, and then held the title on a second occasion. I mean, the man was one of the all-time greats. So it just puzzled me that he wasn't on the card.
He wasn't on the card.
If anybody should be there, it should be him.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then from there, we go to the first ever championship defended at WrestleMania, the WWE Intercontinental Championship. Greg the Hammer Valentine taking on Junkyard Dog.
Yes.
Junkyard Dog to me was one of the best performers I have ever seen. Very charismatic in the ring, entertaining with the fans. I mean, he was all around just a tremendous athlete.
And before he got to WWF, he was already a huge star. He was a huge star.
From NWA.
Yeah, he was huge, and they got him. And then for whatever reason, they didn't really utilize him properly. You know.
No, they didn't. Bigger. I mean, his claim to fame WrestleMania-wise was WrestleMania 3 against former NWA champion Harley Race. When we get to that later on.
Right, yeah.
But I mean, otherwise, I mean, you gave him the he's involved in the first ever title match, so that's something. However, he does win the match, but by countout.
So he does
because Greg the Hammer Valentine was known for kind of getting out of the ring, dodging his opponents, to keep his belt, which eventually would lose to Tito Santana.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, he does get the win. Unfortunately, not the championship.
Right. No.
Now, if you want to talk championships, as far as what was the first title to change hands at WrestleMania, now we go into the next match, which is the WWE Tag Team Championship. You've got the U.S. Express, Mike Rotundo, a.k.a. Bray Wyatt's father, or IRS.
IRS, yeah.
If anybody doesn't know, or if you're a WCW fan, one of the members of the Varsity Club, and Barry Windham, another former NWA great. They were tag team champions. They took on former WWE champion Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov.
Yes.
Managed by one of the all-time greats, Freddie Blassie.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about a guy that knew how to be on the mic.
And get heat.
What was his famous thing? You pencil neck geeks.
Yeah.
That's what he used to call the fans and their opponents. It was great.
Yep.
The Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov became the first guys to win the titles to change hands. They won the tag team titles at WrestleMania against the US Express, which actually then later on that year, the US Express got their titles back. And then eventually Greg Valentine and Beefcake beat them. We'll get to that later on. Now we get to an even more interesting match. One of your favorites, the $15,000 body slam match, which I know this day and age sounds like chump change. You know, right now it'd probably be about $100,000 body slam match or even more. Andre the Giant versus Big John Studd.
Yep.
Now, this was one of my favorites, and I know it was one of yours. Now, obviously, the stipulation to this was that if Andre couldn't body slam him, he has to leave the WWE.
Yep.
Bobby Heenan was always a stickler for trying to get rid of him. I mean, even when he was temporarily put out, and he was known as one of the machines.
That's right. Yeah. Yep.
Big and super machine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that just, whatever. That was a lost 1986 year.
Yeah.
So obviously, Andre the Giant wins because he's got the supposed 15-year unbeaten streak, which he wasn't pinned for 15 years, but he did lose by count out disqualification.
Right.
Andre, if you remember, took the money out of the bag, started throwing it to the fans. Bobby Heenan comes running in, grabs whatever's left in the bag,
scrapes it up,
runs his tail out of the ring and out of the garden. And the fans gave him a standing ovation because Andre put on a great match, slammed him cleanly. And Big John Studd and him, I mean, even real life had heat.
Yeah, they did.
They hated each other.
They did.
I mean, we saw this all the way to 1989.
Yep.
They just did not like each other. They had a series of matches, mostly in tag team, best 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5 falls matches. Always Big John Studd was involved in it with Andre. I mean, those guys just they put on great matches despite the fact they wanted to kill each other.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just, that can 2 other guys come to mind when I think of those 2. But anyway, moving on to the next match was the WWE Women's Championship.
Yes.
Which wasn't really relevant as it is now, but it was still relevant back then. Remember Fabulous Moolah held that title for 27 years?
Whatever it was.
I mean, she ran with it forever. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it was Leilani Kai holding the title. And if you remember, Kai at Water settled the score. She beat Wendy Richter to get the belt, and now Richter was trying to get the belt back.
Yeah.
And it came to a surprise at everybody. And then that's when they used the storyline, since they were on MTV doing it, that Cyndi Lauper was in her at ringside with her. She was helping her train to win back the title.
Right.
Fabulous Moolah was at ringside for Leilani Kai, and rest is history. Wendy Richter wins the WWE Women's Championship. Eventually, she loses it, but whatever. This night belonged to her. She was the first woman to ever win the title at WrestleMania. Yeah. And I believe she's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think so.
So well deserving, because she was a great athlete.
No, absolutely.
And then she was the undercard to the main event. We got Hulk Hogan and Mr. T versus Roddy Piper and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, with Bob Orton and his 6-year cast on his arm at ringside. Jimmy Snuka at ringside for Hulk Hogan and Mr. T.
Yeah. Now, again, this is going to come from Hogan, so you take Hogan's stories with a grain of salt. He said that David Schultz was supposed to be in that match. It wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be Piper and Schultz in that match.
Yeah, but it didn't make any sense, because Orndorff was part of the feud.
Yeah, I know, but Hogan says that Schultz, apparently he slapped Mr. T at some sort of a house show in California and LA. Mm-hmm. Schultz said that never happened. That he did get thrown out of the building, but like he never. And this was coming off the Stossel incident or whatever that happened where he slapped Stossel.
Yes.
But he said that he never touched Mr. T and that he was very friendly with Mr. T. And Hogan says that he actually slapped him, but nobody else has confirmed that actually happened, that he slapped Mr. T. And I've only heard that from Hogan, I think. So
because Schultz denied it.
Right. So who knows? And I've never heard Mr. T say that this guy slapped.
I mean, David Schultz was an up and coming guy that they
He was pretty good. He was good. He was like the original Stone Cold in a lot of ways.
But for whatever reason, whatever politics was played or whatever, and what he did, if it did cost him the match, then who knows. But in my opinion, the main event we got, besides it not being for the title, otherwise the main event where we got, it made sense. Yeah, Orndorff was an on-again, off-again heel of Hogan's, where they'd be taming him with him and then turning on him again. They worked well in the ring together, and he was already sided with Piper. The only other person that would have made sense in the match was Cowboy Bob Orton. Anybody know Randy Orton's dad? But unfortunately, his broken wrist turned into 6-year cast that he never took off, which the gimmick worked for a while.
The gimmick worked, yeah.
I mean, we've seen that before. D'Lo Brown with the chest shield that he wore for almost a year for a torn pec. I mean, they've done it before. But, I mean, the match was good. It ended with, Hogan. Actually, before I even get to that, it was funny because when the brawl started in the ring, Piper confronted the special guest referee for that match, which was Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali put him on his butt.
Mm-hmm.
He decked him in an attempt to restore order, and they eventually restarted the match.
Right.
And everybody knows Orton goes off the top rope, tries to hit Hogan with the cast. Instead, he hits Orndorff.
Yeah, when he turns.
And then Hogan gets the pin, and Hogan and Mr. T were successful against Piper and Orndorff.
And Snuka didn't even really do anything in that match. I think he might have been there for 2 seconds.
He brawled a little bit, but it was really nothing. Orton got involved more than anybody.
Yeah.
Especially on costing Piper and Orndorff the match, which once he went off the top rope, you kind of expected it.
Yeah. I thought it was okay. It was what it was. It wasn't the greatest
for their first one.
Yeah.
For the talent that they had back then, I mean, the main event could have been a little better, but otherwise, they pulled it off.
Yeah, they pulled it off, and it was this one was on closed circuit TV, They did huge numbers across the country, so it was a success. And I think originally they were saying that it was just a one-off, that it was just a one-off. They weren't going to have other WrestleManias, but it was so huge that
they wound up making it a yearly thing come March or April, which we're all glad they did, because I mean 36 years later we're about to experience WrestleMania 37.
Yep. For
2 nights, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it paved the way for what we've seen over the years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Vince, he got the idea from like the Super Bowl, World Series, those big championships. He got an idea, wait, I could do an annual thing like they do in other sports. A championship, like a big event, and it worked out.
And the name fit.
So that's our WrestleMania 1 review. We're going to be going on to WrestleMania 2 next. You guys let us know what you think about WrestleMania 1, and we'll see you soon. Like, comment, share, subscribe.